listening to the Hearse Chaser podcast show. Here's your host, Stephen McClellan.
Right. I am Stephen McClellan, and I'm here today with Kalynn Jackson. She's the owner of Cornerstone Caregiving. And Kalynn, I'll let you start by giving a brief introduction of Cornerstone Caregiving and what you do there.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. So like Stephen said, I'm the director for Cornerstone Caregiving here in Searcy, and we are a non-skilled home care agency, meaning, we are not RNs or therapists, but rather CNAs, certified nursing assistants, and caregivers that come into the home, and we offer anywhere from 1 to 24-hour care 7 days a week, in which we allow families to customize the days and the times that they want us there. And then we schedule accordingly to their preference. But when an aide comes out, there's really a multitude of different things we can help with. So things that we do are like bathing, dressing, grooming, incontinence care, medication reminders, medication management, preparing meals, helping around the house with household tasks, errand running, helping people get to appointments, grocery shopping. There's just so many different things. So we will customize a care plan specific to each patient. We do full background checks on all of our employees. And we keep managers on call, 24/7 to make sure that we have all hands on deck for our families. So
yeah, we've actually had we've had mutual clients, and a few times they've mentioned us and they've mentioned you, and they're like, "Oh, Kalynn is great," and they just love your staff and your people. And I love how you talk about the people that work with you, how they become very connected to the families. And sometimes you've actually tried to match personalities, right? With
absolutely.
Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about how you help make sure that there's a right fit there when they do find that person?
Yeah. So at Cornerstone, we have over 100 clients, in which are all in different stages of life. We have some that we call are, green, and they are very active and they just need somebody to drive them around town to appointments. And then we have some in the middle, and then we have some that are on hospice alongside us that are at end of life that have passed underneath our care. And so when I go in to start with a family, if they are aware of pricing and everything and they want to set up an appointment, then I come out and I do an assessment, which is basic paperwork that consists of medical history, background, emergency contacts, kind of their preferences on what they specifically need help with. And once we complete that, we take a look at the big picture, and we have, like I said, about 85 caregivers. And so we kind of come back and we say, out of all of these caregivers, who do we feel like would be the best match based on the client's need and then the caregiver's skill set, right? So if we have somebody that's closer to end of life that is needing a lot more care, then obviously I'm going to look at my most experienced caregivers for that patient. But if I have somebody that doesn't need as much, then we may pair somebody different. But something that we say and ask all the time in assessments is, these people are in their home and we want them to be comfortable in their home. So we want to make sure that it's the right fit. We ask them, do they have a preference? Do you have somebody that is more quiet? Maybe they don't want somebody that's real chatty. We take things into consideration, and we always tell them, if we were to ever send you somebody and maybe y'all's personalities just don't jive, or y'all have different interests, that's okay. Like we welcome that feedback. We want to know that, and we will send you somebody different because we want to make sure that you're comfortable in your home.
Yeah, that's a good point. You think, I think most children are probably contacting you, and they're probably the ones helping kind of facilitate moving things along, and they're going to know mom's personality, whether she's outgoing or an introvert. And I'm sure that can change too. I can definitely see myself as an old man and say, I'm done talking. Like, I just want to read a book. I've done enough. And so I'm sure there's a lot of people that maybe their personalities do change a little bit and may even change over the course of time.
Sure.
And having that caregiver that can recognize that, I'm sure there's a lot of feedback that they can give to the children about the things they're seeing, especially if those children. We have a lot of clients. The kids have moved out of the state of Arkansas,
Mhm.
somewhere else, bigger cities, Dallas or so, and having that point of contact that can check in on mom and dad, and I'm sure that really just kind of helps that relationship, that so the kids know what's going on. Do you see a lot of that in what
Oh,
you do?
absolutely. So most of the time, like today when I met with the family, the son was in Tennessee, and so we three-wayed him in on the call so that he could be in the loop with everything. But we do keep managers on call 24/7, and so if mom forgot to tell us that she has an appointment tomorrow and she's told son at 8 o'clock, then they can just text or call our number, and it goes straight to the on-call manager for that night, and we can relay the messages to the caregivers. So being able to do that is very helpful, because when they do call after hours, it doesn't take them to a call center or anything. It takes them directly to the people in the office that are familiar with their situation and who they are. But we absolutely see that all the time.
You mentioned a three-way call. I'm sure that generation probably is not the most tech savvy. So having the ability, even maybe to FaceTime or something where they can see mom where they wouldn't have otherwise, they can lay eyes on them and see them and get a better picture of how their parents actually doing. A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? And
Right.
like, my dad has a flip phone, right? He will always have a flip phone. He'll never FaceTime me. He does it. I have to send pictures, and we have to.
Yeah.
Did you get a picture, Dad? No, I'm gonna close the phone. I'll look at it and then call you back. And so, and he's in his 60s, so the 80-year-olds, some just aren't too tech savvy, and I'm sure just a little bit of technology can really help with those relationships.
Yes, and just having people in the home that can be the eyes and the ears for families that are out of state really gives them peace of mind. So, you're not only there to help the client out, but you're also there to help, maybe the wife of the client that's the primary caregiver, or, you're helping the kids out by giving them that peace of mind, or if they're working full time. I mean, there's so many different avenues that our services can be helpful. And our goal is to be able to provide all the assistance that clients and families need to be able to age in place and not have to go into long-term care nursing homes.
And you mentioned a good point there that sometimes, being an adult caregiver, like if you're a spouse, it is the hardest thing. I mean, I see a lot of husbands or wives who are taking care of their loved one. They are exhausted. They
Mm-hmm.
are worn down. Sometimes they have to get someone to watch their loved one just to come into my office and talk. And I'm sure I encourage them, if there's any way that you can take a vacation, you still need to take a
Mm-hmm.
vacation and take a break. And you do have 24-hour care, and you can do respite care for like 24-hour periods, even for a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
If a mom or dad has to get away for a college graduation, uh,
Yep.
to do that while maybe the loved one is unable to attend, they still want somebody there, right? Do you see some of that happen?
Oh yes, all the time. We had a lady that had Alzheimer's, and her husband and the daughter wanted them to go to the grandson's graduation in Colorado. And the husband was like, "There's no way I can do that," and we were like, "Yes, you can." So we provided 24/7 for the week, and him and his daughter and all the family flew out to Colorado, and he needed that respite so bad, and so that was great for the whole family to be able to get together and do that. We have people that do long term, we have people that do like a weekend, like you mentioned, and then we have families that, maybe they're not 24/7 care with us, but they're on a routine schedule twice a week from 8 to 5 or 8 to 2, so that they know on Mondays and Thursdays that they can go to the bank and go to the grocery store, go get their hair done, and mom and dad are taken care of. So, they have full autonomy to set their own schedule and their needs that not only help the client, but helps the primary caregiver and the family too.
Yeah. When we were talking before this, you said in the intro that you do non-skilled. And I said, look, I was silly. I thought it was both. But when we were talking, you said, the things that you do, it's not helping the medical side. It's more like the bathing, and those things aren't covered by health insurance, the
Right.
Medicare, correct? So those things are definitely little things that they just kind of add up, if you don't have someone helping. And so I just thought that was kind of you're there to the skilled care that you get through health insurance is really just a supplement. I think that's the term you used, right?
Yeah, so we get asked that question almost every day. They're like, "Well, my friend told me that home health is covered under insurance, and that's what y'all do, right?" And I think it's very important for people to understand the difference. And so you have skilled home health, which in our area would be like Unity Home Health, Stat Home Health, UAMS Home Health. And where those services are needed, and yes, they're covered under insurance, private insurance or Medicare, that is when a nurse comes out once or twice a week for that skill that needs to be done, whether that's wound care, whether that's a PICC line, whether that's physical therapy, from a physical therapist. But then once that skill is taught or complete, they discharge and they're gone, right? They're not there long term. But so many people think that they're going to get all of these aid services under home health, which is skilled, that a lot of doctors refer out for. So we are on the non-skilled side, meaning the bathing, the dressing, all the activities of daily living that people need hour to hour in the home. Now, we are not covered under insurance unless they have long-term care insurance, in which we'll kind of get into that, in a minute. But because we're private pay majority or long-term care insurance, it doesn't interfere for us to be in the home at the same time as skilled home health. And it actually works beautifully together. Kind of another point I think that's important to hit on is I worked in hospice for several years before I came into Cornerstone Caregiving. So I've been on the skilled side of things. And a lot of the times we hear people say, oh, we've got hospice coming out, and they think that hospice is going to be around the clock. And it's not. Hospice is a great service in which, sorry, I've got to get my charger for my laptop before it dies. Hospice is a great service and it's needed, but they send out a nurse once or twice a week. They'll send out an aide, 2 or 3 times a week for a shower, but those aides have 8 patients in a day. So they're there, 30, 45 minutes and they're gone. They do have social workers that come out that can help with things like once a month, and chaplains, and they cover, medical equipment in the home that's needed. They cover incontinence supplies, and they do have on-call 24/7. And I feel like that's really important. So when we have somebody on hospice, they have actually become some of our biggest referral sources, because when the social workers are coming out, they're seeing that these families are exhausted and that they need more help than what hospice actually provides. So they're referring to us to come in to help with non-skilled services, and they actually work beautifully together. So having an on-call number 24 hours a day in case of an emergency to send out an RN, to assess the situation, and then us being on the non-skilled side allows us to be able to let people age in place at home and not go to a nursing home or an assisted living.
Thank you for tuning in to the Hearse Chaser podcast show. Our mission is to be your first choice for last wishes. Want to dive deeper? Join us over at the Hearse Chaser Academy, where we've created 8 on-demand courses for each stage of life. From young adulthood to retirement, navigating separation or blended families, and everything in between, we help you plan for the future, no matter where you're at. Now stay with us as the ride continues on the Hearse Chaser podcast show.
Yeah, I think you hit on a big point there. Most of my clients, they want to stay in their home as long as possible. And when we talk about their families, I often see a very big divide between those with daughters and those with sons. And so a lot of times, if they've moved away, or even if the kids live locally, if they're sons, a lot of times sons are not the most involved in that type of non-skilled help.
Right.
That's typically the way they are. You know my family. I have 3 daughters, so I'm like taken care of, right? Hopefully, one
For
of them
life.
will.
Yep.
So I think even them, if you don't have a lot of kids, or the kids are in another state and have their own things, this allows for mom and dad to stay in the place where they love, where they're comfortable. And if it's an extra 2 years or an extra 3 years that they get to stay in their home, it's 2 or 3 more Christmases, it's 2 or 3 more birthdays. I mean, you can't put a price tag on that feeling that they have, because I don't like moving, and I'm sure they don't like moving either. Are some of your patients' families? That's really a big thing, that they want mom and dad to stay in the home as long as possible, right?
Yes, and I would say, something really important that a lot of people don't realize is when you have somebody with Alzheimer's, dementia, Lewy body dementia, this is a statistic you can actually look up. But when you take somebody out of their home that they've been in for 40 or 50 years and you move them to a nursing home, you will see a significant decline in that patient within the first year. So, statistically, people thrive better in their own home. And so, if we can help them to be able to do that, that's our goal. And we have been known to really strategize, like we tell families all the time, where there's a will, there's a way, like
Mhm.
give us an idea of what your budget looks like a month. We'll see how many hours that breaks down to a week. And then let's look at your routine and let's prioritize those hours to fit into the most important parts of the day that it makes the most sense. And
Oh,
so, we have a lot of families that we do all day care. We have some that are half days. We have some that we do split shifts so that they have a morning touch point and an evening touch point, what we call like a rise and shine in the morning and then a tuck in at night. So there's a lot of different ways that we can look at it to allow them to stay at home as long as possible.
yeah, that's just those. There are, not, maybe they don't need someone there every hour of the day, but definitely making sure, especially if they wake up, I'm sure there's medicines they have to take to start their day. And, I see the biggest thing I see, on the healthcare side of things, for drinking, right? If you don't drink enough, right,
Mm-hmm.
you can get UTIs, and then you're in the hospital. A lot of things can go downhill, but having somebody there that can just check, having that cup of water that they set aside, say, hey, make sure you drink this water, and just little things. It's really a challenge to make sure all things are taken care of. Let's see. We talked about like what is your, if people wanted to know more about Cornerstone, get in touch with you. What is your radius as far as the folks that you help in Arkansas?
Yeah, so we cover a 50-mile radius with Searcy being the center. So just to kind of break that down as far as counties go, we cover all of White County, Lone Oak, Cleburne, Faulkner, Prairie, Jackson, Woodruff, and parts of Independence. So we don't go all the way to Batesville, but we cover like Pleasant Plains and south of that.
That's a lot of folks that that you can take care of, and hope that maybe you grow it to, maybe, I think we have 75 counties in Arkansas. So if they wanted to get in touch with you, so let's say there's a family that's thinking about, I think this might be something we want to look into. How does that look? How do they contact you? What are some things they should know before they talk to you, so that they can get help as quickly as possible for their loved one?
Yeah, so probably the best way would just to be to contact us directly at our office, and that number is 501-305-0283. We do have a website that they can go on and, inquire about care, and it'll send us to our email.
I think I'll share that right now. It's cornerstonecaregiving.com, right?
Yes.
And there's a get starting little button. Peace of mind for you and your loved ones. This is the one, right?
Yep, that's
There
it.
we go.
And so when you inquire on there, then that comes to my email with your phone number, and always reach out that way. Some things to just kind of know is maybe, evaluate the situation, see what your loved one's goals of care are. Like if they want to be home and that's where they want to be and they don't want to go to an assisted living, then, how much care do they need? What does their routine look like? And we always help kind of strategize that when we come out for an assessment. Finances, obviously people need to kind of know what that looks like and what they're comfortable with. I will kind of mention, Stephen, long-term care. We have a few patients with that. It's not as popular, but I always say they're golden, for the people that have them. And what we have seen is that a lot of people know that they have one, but they don't really know much or how to navigate that. And so if you know that you have long-term care insurance, we can help navigate that. Basic information to know on a policy that would be helpful coming into an assessment is, who your insurance carrier is, whether that's Bankers Life or John Hancock, Genworth. Long-term care policies are purchased through financial institutions like Edward Jones most of the time, and they are a separate premium that would have been paid on for years outside of their traditional health insurance. And those policies specifically pay so much per month for in-home care, assisted living, or nursing home. And then it's up to your family to choose which route they want to go. So just knowing who the insurance carrier is, what your monthly or daily allowable is, and do you have a waiting period? Some policies will say that you need to pay 30 days out of pocket before they'll start paying. And then some pay back to day one as soon as the claim's processed. But we definitely can kind of walk you through that and help you get the claim processed if you have one. And we do send care notes and invoices weekly to long-term care insurance companies for the patient so that they don't have to do that each week and can get their reimbursement.
I'm glad you mentioned long-term care. I think those are great products for folks who have those. Do you find some people are kind of reluctant to use those policies? I feel like in some cases, I feel like people wait. I'm not ready yet to use it, or I'm just going to hold off a few more months. What would your advice be to those families who maybe have that policy? Maybe it's for 3 years, and they're just wondering, should I start this or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, every policy is different. I had one the other day that didn't have a lifetime max. I mean,
Oh,
paid 8 hours a day without a lifetime max. So that was a no-brainer, like you've paid on it for 20 years, you need to utilize it. Some policies, we have one now that is a 3-year term, kind of like you said, but it's 3 years or a certain max, up to so many hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what we can do is kind of break that down, because if you're not needing 24/7 care for 3 years, or you're not needing 12 hours a day, most of the time whatever you don't use carries over. And so it's usually 3 years or this revenue. So depending on the need, you may have 7 or 8 years worth of care, at the rate that you're telling me you only need 8 hours a day. So I think it's a matter of where the patient is at that time in their overall health and what their specific policy says. But if you've paid on a policy for years and years and years, obviously nobody knows when it's their time, right? But I would say just don't overuse it if you're not to that point, and where you need 24/7 care, then I wouldn't recommend starting with 24/7 care.
so
But
is
ease into
there
it.
is there like a triggering event? Like, is it where like maybe there's two activities of daily living that they can't meet? Is that the triggering point to say, hey, you can now use this policy?
So most long-term care insurances, most, not all, but they will send out a nurse to do an evaluation to see if they think that the patient qualifies. Some don't send out a nurse, but they have a form that they have the PCP fill out in the claim process. So, and let me kind of back up a little bit. If somebody has a long-term care policy and they've never used it, they call the long-term care insurance company and they say, okay, I'm ready to open a claim. They're going to mail a packet to the policyholder claim paperwork. They fill that out, and that's where that PCP document would come into play, or just general information that they need. And then they mail that back. That takes about 30 days to process. And I have a lot of families say, well, shouldn't we wait till the claim processes? No, because either one, you're going to have an elimination period that has to be met anyways while this claim is processing, or you don't have an elimination period and they're going to backdate to day one anyways. So once they process that claim and we're identified as the care provider, they will call us and ask us for the plan of care for the patient as well as the business license, and we will submit that to them. And we just continue on, like we schedule and continue on with care, and then weekly we'll send that invoice and those care notes in. But most of the time you need assistance with at least 2 activities of daily living for insurances to say, okay, this is valid for you to open.
Gotcha. Well, I'm sure we could talk. We could go on. I mean, this is what you do, and you could talk for hours and hours. And I just really appreciate you, Kalynn. You've been a great resource, a great help, helping clients. You have a great reputation. You do great work. I'm happy to have someone that folks can talk to and get really good help. So one of the things I like to end each of my podcasts with is going back to the idea of Hearse Chaser, right? And thinking about your obituary, if you had to have an obituary. So if you have an obituary and somebody, what would you want them to write about you when you're done with this race of life?
I haven't ever thought about my own obituary. But if I were to answer that, I would want somebody to remember me as somebody that was caring, that went the extra mile, that helped so many seniors in our community be able to have a higher level of care and quality of life. There's so many people that don't have that, and I always feel like people that come into the world with dignity need to go out with the same dignity, and you have to have care in place for that to happen with a lot of different circumstances, in certain disease processes. My grandmother, she still has Alzheimer's, and she, it's just been a struggle, and she would be mortified of the things that she knew that she was doing, but she's just not in her right state of mind. And so being able to have care teams in place to be able to help preserve that is so important. And hopefully everybody would remember me as a good mom and a good wife. And I have a 5-year-old little boy that I love with all my heart. And so I think that would be it.
I think all that is absolutely true. You've gone above and beyond, above just taking care of folks, and it's such a needed thing as the population gets older, and typically, and having somebody that they can trust and talk to. I think all those things are true. Hopefully, that obituary is not going to be written for a really long time from now, but appreciate you sharing that with us today. So that's all for podcast today, and we thank you for joining, and we'll talk to you the next time.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Hearse Chaser podcast show. Please remember, you can't outrun a hearse, but you can leave your family with a smooth ride.